Good morning. Today we return to the shelter of each other, to arms that hold us in the midst of storms, to voices that help us hear our own, to hearts that accept us for who we are. May we be for each other a source of safety and sending. May we offer each other both comfort and challenge. May this place of peace, whether you are here in the walls or joining us from afar, may this place of peace lead us to share peace with others. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. My name is Sandy Portillo-Robbins, and I will be your worship associate for today. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. If this is your first time here, we're so glad you've come. And whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. Let us kindle our chalice flame with these words. And so we gather from the ebb and flow of our lives, thirsty for connection to ourselves, thirsty for connection to others. As we light this chalice, may all who gather here be filled with joy and hope, filled with compassion and love. We also pause to remind ourselves of some of the foundations of resilience. With Reverend Michelle, we light a candle of courage, a candle of acts of service, a candle of fellowship, and a candle of hope. May we find and cultivate these foundations of resilience in ourselves and in one another. Now please join us in singing our opening song, Morning Has Come. The words will appear on the screen. Please join with me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Come up for our story. Come on, folks, young at heart too. Come on, come on. Yep, have a seat. Excellent. See, it makes it okay for our littler ones to come too, so they're not so outnumbered. Well, they are outnumbered, but okay. So, any of you ever had an argument? Anybody out here ever had an argument? Yeah, okay, every hand should be raised here. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story about two rivers that also really liked arguing. Anybody here really like arguing? Okay, now I'm going to take notes. Anybody? Uh-oh, I thought I saw a hand move. Okay, anyways, once upon a time, there were two rivers flowing side by side. Both rivers liked to argue because they liked to argue about who was best between them. The water in my river is better than the water in your river, said one. No, the water in my river is better than the water in your river, said the other. The two rivers would flow along all day, arguing about which was best. Both were quite sure, of course, that they were the greatest, of course. Doesn't my water make a joyful sound as it runs over the smooth, polished pebbles on my bottom? And look at the way the sun reflects off the ripples and eddies that form around the granite boulders at my edge. These things are so beautiful, surely I'm the best. Well, the other river also, of course, had a claim. But look at all the fish that swim in my clear, cool water. Have you heard the frogs singing at night? They live in the reeds and lilies that grow on my banks. I am home to so many wonderful creatures. Surely I am the best river. The two continued to argue until one day, something strange and unexpected happened. The rivers rounded a bend, slid down some small falls, and suddenly saw they were flowing towards something much bigger and greater than themselves. Up ahead were big crashing waves and water everywhere as far as they could see. Where did they make it to? Do you know? The ocean, exactly. They were churning together into the ocean. Then a sound came from the sky, because of course in stories, rivers and skies can talk. Came from a cloud that chuckled for a moment and then said, "Now, rivers, you see how foolish you have been this whole time. There is no highest or lowest. There is no best. There is no greatest or least. All things are one, and all are joined together like rivers in the sea." So not only is this about arguing, it's about our seventh principle. Can anyone rattle off our seventh principle? There, we got some. The respect for the interdependent web of existence of which we all are a part, because all are one, just like rivers in the sea. All right. Thank you for coming up for the story. And next week is an intergen service. It's the start of our church year with our religious education kicking off. So I hope we'll have lots here for it.
I carry your heart with me, I carry it in my heart. I am never without it, anywhere I go, you go, my dear. And whatever is done by only me is your doing, my darling. I fear no fate, for you are my fate, my sweet. I want no world, for beautiful you are my world, my true. And it's you are whatever a moon has always meant, and whatever a sun will always sing is you. The sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is the wonder that's keeping the stars apart. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart.
Starting with that lovely music, let us now take a few moments to center ourselves. Go ahead and settle into your seat, wherever that might be. Feel your body resting on the seat, and furthermore into our Mother Earth. I invite you to take a deep breath, feeling it fill your lungs, and when you are ready, to gently release it. And another, feeling the life flow in and through, and the air flowing, bringing you life, connecting you with all that is around us. During our time this morning, we lift up and hold in our hearts those who may be struggling around us, in our communities, maybe even ourselves, especially lifting up those we may know who have COVID right now, including a number in our church community. Let us join now in a time of silence. Some words of meditation for us. I awoke this morning in the gold light, turning this way and that way, thinking for a moment it was one day like any other. But the veil had gone from my darkened heart, and I thought it must have been the quiet candlelight that filled my room. It must have been the first easy rhythm with which I breathed myself to sleep. It must have been the prayer I said, speaking to the otherness of the night. And I thought, this is the good day you could meet your love. This is the day someone close to you could die. This is the day you realize how easily the thread is broken between this world and the next. And I found myself sitting up in the quiet pathway of light, the tawny, close-grained cedar burning round me like a fire, and all the angels of this housely heaven ascending through the first roof of light the sun had made. This is the bright home in which I live. This is where I ask my friends to come. This is where I want to love all the things it has taken me so long to learn to love. This is the temple of my adult aloneness that I belong to, that aloneness as I belong to my life, because there is no house like a house of belonging. And now as we hold the stillness of that house of belonging around us, please remain seated for our meditative hymn, the Unitarian Transylvanian hymn, Find a Stillness. The words will be on screen.
Today's reading is called Heart's Opening by Scott Samler Michael. Before seminary, I worked as an electrician out of IBEW Local 24 in Baltimore. I first realized that I was called to ministry on a job site, the mustard gas neutralization facility at Edgewood Arsenal. Really? Near the entrance gate, next to the time clock, someone had placed a big arrow pointing down at a trash can. Above the arrow, a sign demanded, "Leave your feelings here," in capital letters. This was an unusually blatant display of the golden rule of the macho world of industrial construction. Your whole self is not welcome here. Now, there is some logic to discouraging emotional outbursts on construction sites. There's a job to be done, and it requires focus and precision, especially in the electrical trade. A lack of focus can result in, well, fire and death. Sometimes we can feel isolated even in the midst of a mighty crowd. The project I was working on at the mustard gas neutralization facility was mandated by the International Chemical Weapons Convention, and it had nearly 400 employees. Yet there were times I felt completely alone. I was the control wire foreman for Building 4, and it is true that a foreman is not always one of the men. A good foreman inspires, motivates, and rewards. Yes, but also needs a sense of detachment. Foremen have to lay people off, not because they are not good workers, but because the need for workers fluctuates over the course of a project. When one phase ends and the next is not yet ready to begin, reduction in force, layoffs come around, usually according to seniority. As a foreman, I kept my distance in many ways, by reading, by eating lunch alone, by poring over plans. The tough guy culture of the job site means that those in charge are especially forbidden to express much emotion. Except occasional anger, some laughter, sadly often at inappropriate jokes, and the necessary attaboy for a job well done. And then one day, a man we called Squiggy sat down at the lunch table where I was reading. Construction workers often have nicknames. I never knew his real name. Squiggy was the king of the over-the-top practical jokes, and at first I assumed he was messing with me. But when I looked up, his eyes were filled with tears. I put down my book, and he opened up to me, as if I were his chaplain. He shared that his girlfriend was cheating on him and running up his credit cards. He was very afraid that the other men would see him sharing his despair, so I took him into the foreman's trailer where he could hide. Here he was, a strong, seasoned wireman, on a job with men who had been his colleagues for 20 years, on a job site with 400 men, and he chose to confide in me. In May 2003, while I was still foreman on that job site, members of my fellowship and I attended Union Sunday at the First Unitarian Church of Baltimore. This is the annual celebration of Channing's famous sermon, Unitarian Christianity, delivered in Baltimore in 1819. And my friends and I wanted to celebrate our faith tradition in that beautiful old church. That Sunday, Reverend Rob Hardy's preached a sermon titled, "Religion is for Lovers." Hardy's proclaimed, "Religion is for lovers, lovers of truth, lovers of justice, lovers of our full humanity." As I heard those words, the door to my heart opened wide. I started to nod and sob and then shake, trembling with tears. I was not alone. That day, I realized that Unitarian Universalism granted me license to be completely human, that it encouraged my whole self to enter the room and shine forth in the company of folks covenanted to worship together and to hold one another.
Do y'all remember remember times when you've played around with an echo? Like as a child or an adult in a large outdoor space, something like a football stadium or a large room or cave. Anybody? Okay, good, I'm not the only one. Isn't it fun to hear our own voices echoed back at us? I especially like getting to hear more than one echo as it kind of reverberates through the space and gets back to you at different times. Now, the opposite of this is being in a good-sized space that doesn't echo at all. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Concerts would sound absolutely awful if each strain of music got to you at different times than they were intended to. But there can also be a strange feeling being in a space that doesn't echo, especially when you speak to see if there is one and you're kind of expecting it. It's almost a lonely feeling, like our echo is actually someone else there with us. It's like one might feel more alone without the echo. So this month's theme, we're back on monthly themes. We took a break for the summer, now we're back. This month's theme is belonging, which is appropriate in so many ways. As we're kicking off the church year, and as we're kicking off this new church year for the first time in this post-ish COVID pandemic reality. Yearning for belonging, yearning for community. These things have been underneath many of the needs and longings during the past couple of years. Celtic poet and absolutely fabulous great thinker John O'Donohue says this about belonging. In a postmodern culture, there is a deep hunger to belong. An increasing majority of people feel isolated and marginalized. Experience is haunted by fragmentation. Many traditional shelters are in ruins. Society is losing the art of fostering community. Consumerism is now propelling life towards the lonely isolation of individualism. Technology pretends to unite us, yet more often than not, all it delivers are simulated images. The global village, as it's called, has no roads or neighbors. It is instead a faceless limbo from which all individuality has been abstracted. From this perspective, he says, it seems we are in the midst of a huge crisis of belonging. When the outer cultural shelters are in ruins, we need to explore and reawaken the depths of belonging in the human mind and soul. Perhaps the recognition of the depth of our hunger to belong may gradually assist us in awakening new and unexpected possibilities of community and friendship. O'Donohue's statement is absolutely filled with things to unpack about belonging and human nature. Did you start to pick up some? We'll be going back through it, don't worry. To start with, he reminds us of the core human need to belong and to have somewhere that we can belong. It's a core human need and it is a core spiritual need. We have a deep hunger to have somewhere that we can be, somewhere we can belong. Places where we can be seen, be known, be heard, places where we can each be accepted for all of who we are and as we are. And to have places where we feel like we fit in and are needed and wanted. That's belonging. However, doesn't it seem like there are fewer and fewer places in our society and in our lives where we can truly find that kind of place? Remember, here's what O'Donohue said. In postmodern culture, there is a deep hunger to belong. An increasing majority of people feel isolated and marginalized. Experience is haunted by fragmentation, as many of the traditional shelters are in ruins and society is losing the art of fostering community. Looking at the numbers and at communities and voluntary organizations and their membership numbers, so many trends are clear. Organization membership and community participation continue on a downward trend, and civic participation continues to fall as well. You can even see this in the numbers about church membership and church participation across any type of church. In 2005, 47% of congregations saw fewer than 100 folks on Sundays. 10 years later, 58% saw fewer than 100 on Sundays. Median attendance in 2005 was 129 across all American congregations, and that fell to a median attendance of 80 in just 10 years. 129 median all the way down to 80. Author Tom Rainer notes, about 20 years ago, a church member was considered active in a church if she attended 3 times a week. Today, he wrote, a church member is considered active in the church if they attend 3 times a month. And add into all of that, the number of religiously unaffiliated folks continues to rise nationally. And it's not just religious organizations. You can probably think of places that existed 20 or 30 years ago, but simply don't anymore. For example, 4-H clubs, remember those? They used to be extremely prolific. And you know, you can still find some around in some areas, but really not nearly to the same degree. A friend of mine was recently looking for any 4-H clubs in the greater Phoenix area. All she found in the greater Phoenix area was a single club that was focused on horseback riding. And of course, there are many other examples of this. Society is losing the art of fostering community. And these, as we may call them, traditional shelters simply aren't there. And of course, this is all before COVID continued to ravage so many more of our communities. As O'Donohue said, consumerism is now propelling life towards the lonely isolation of individualism. Technology pretends to unite us, yet more often than not, all it delivers are simulated images. I could probably write a thesis on that line alone. Now, we've talked about technology before. We talk about it quite regularly. And while it does enable connections over greater distances than ever, even to someone or someone's idea from across the globe, it hasn't enhanced connections or community or belonging much at all. And despite the increased possibility for connection, loneliness has simply continued to grow. We live in a time of profound loneliness, even more pronounced than only 25 or 30 years ago. There was a study done on loneliness in the United States in 1985, and then that same study was repeated in 2004, so you get the apples to apples comparison in studies. So in 1985, 10% of those surveyed said they had no one with whom they could share personal information, and an additional 5% had only their spouses or partners. Okay, so that was 1985, 10% had no one, and an additional 5% only had their partners. Okay, now 2004, you'd think more technology going on, right? 24% said they had no one with whom they could share things on a personal level. And a total of 53% said they had no confidant outside their family. A recent study showed that 76% of respondents displayed acute signs of loneliness. 76% were either moderate lonely or very lonely. They pointed out that there's a misperception that loneliness means social isolation. Loneliness is subjective. It's about how you feel. The definition of loneliness is distress because of a discrepancy between actual social relationships and desired social relationships. The discrepancy between what I want and what I have. People may feel lonely even if they're married and have a network of friends, if in their hearts they don't feel like it's what they really need. And loneliness can be more acute during many periods of our lives. A study found 3 peak times for this. First, when folks are in their late 20s, making lots of decisions about their lives. The next, in their mid-50s. And then last, in their 80s, when folks are beginning to face increasing limitations from health and mobility changes. And I forget the exact percentage, but someone recently looked at UUCB's membership numbers and ages, and it was a highly significant percentage of UUCBers who are in their 80s right now. Another time of peak loneliness and isolation, folks who've recently retired, folks who've moved, and also, as well, we know so well when folks can't get to the people with whom they have their normal social networks, they have their holidays, they have their routines. So much of this has been disrupted during the past 2 years. It is no wonder that belonging is what so many of us are reaching for right now. O'Donohue reminds us that the global village has no roads or neighbors. It is a faceless limbo from which all individuality has been abstracted. That's kind of stark, right? We can talk a lot about the global village, and there are some really great things that have come from worldwide connections and sharing that can now take place. But it is so easy to get lost in the scale of things as individuals and in terms of individual relationships. We need things on a human scale, and hearing about events or ideas on the other side of the planet just doesn't make these human scale things and connections happen. The global village and global networks haven't created human scale communities or enhanced connections and belonging on an individual level. We need that more than ever. In a sense, it's even misleading to use that word village for global village, because it's really the opposite of a village. Because to me, a village means a small-ish place where everyone generally knows everyone else, things going on for them and their families, and they care for each other, the connections with each other that happen all over the place. And that's something that our neighborhoods so much really don't do anymore either. Now, there are some neighborhoods that'll function fairly well in this regard, but neighborhoods as a whole don't function much like villages anymore. Even in apartment buildings I've lived in, where we're literally sharing the same walls, I might not even know my immediate neighbors, but and I might know my immediate neighbors' names, but not folks maybe who I share a floor and a ceiling with, or I might not even know the names of my immediate neighbors. Now, there are some neighborhoods and some cultures where this is different, but by and large, we could certainly use more village-like spaces and village-like connections. Remember, as O'Donohue said, it seems we are in the midst of a huge crisis of belonging. We really need to explore and reawaken the depths of belonging in the human mind and soul. We are in the midst of a huge crisis of belonging and a huge crisis of community. I worry about this, what it means for us in our local areas and what it means for us as a country. Our outer cultural shelters are in ruins. The changes and challenges in the world, in our country, in our states, in our climates continue to mount as these traditions and structures fall apart and are disrupted. And the problem is there isn't an easy way to build new ones, certainly not right away. And as we're shifting away from some types of community and some types of membership, we really don't have working replacements that we're shifting to. And add to that the increasingly distant neighborhoods in which we live that necessitate driving from place to place. And the, of course, increasing polarity in our country when differences of opinion and differences in the way we see things, differences in the voices we listen to, create ever-increasing distance among us. This is a huge crisis of connections and belonging. But just as much as we are in a crisis, there are some solutions that naming the crisis proposes. We name that it is a crisis of belonging and of loneliness, and we do this from within a community of belonging and connection, one that does partnerships well too. The opposite of loneliness, the opposite of rejection is belonging and community. And that is something I hope that we can foster here and continue to foster here, whether through connections and friendships that folks make here, as well as groups like our Chalice Circles, and even committees and other working groups. That work day that just happened yesterday, that was belonging and community. Now, I don't think we can fix the huge issues happening society-wise, but that doesn't mean that we can't create a loving community of belonging and care right where we are for those who are here, and then sending that out however we can into our community. As O'Donohue reminds us, perhaps, he says, the recognition of the depth of our hunger to belong may gradually assist us in awakening new and unexpected possibilities of community and friendship. Ultimately, we are called on to nurture the communities and places of belonging that are here, as well as seek out and awaken new possibilities. The challenges we face and the challenges we will face in the world need nothing less than that. And they will require ever new ways of thinking as well as adaptation of existing ones. I don't know what we will need going forward, But I know that the best way to find that is together. And I hope that is something we can continue to work on in our community with each other and move towards together as we go. May it be so.
At this point in our service, we invite you to make an offering. With our offering, each of us has the opportunity to recommit to making UCB a strong and vibrant community. For now, we're conducting the offering in the sanctuary without passing the plate. Instead, you can either give electronically or you can take a donation envelope from the back of the pew in front of you and place it in the donation box, which it sits in the fountain by the atrium. They're little black boxes. We support our wonderful Good Neighbor organizations through our plate offering. Offerings of any value are always received with gratitude. Thank you. Each week, half our plate offering is shared with the Good Neighbor organization recommended by our Social Justice Council. We're grateful that you've continued to practice generosity with our good neighbors through these very hard times. This month, our Good Neighbor is Youth Spirit Artworks, an interfaith art jobs and job training program located in Berkeley that is committed to empowering homeless and low-income Bay Area young people ages 16 to 25. YSA was founded in 2007 as a response to the enormous employment challenges of older homeless and low-income youth. Their mission is to use art jobs and jobs training to empower and transform the lives of youth, giving young people the skills, experience, and self-confidence needed to meet their full potential. On September 18th, a YSA representative will attend our service to speak to us in person. Please join me in dedicating our offering. we dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
All right, y'all have the announcements time, don't you? Yes, exactly. There's awesome stuff going on here. So, Chalice Circles, okay, we're talking about belonging, and one of our core ways to be able to find belonging here is our Chalice Circles. They're about to start up for the fall, and on September 25th, in the morning during the personal theology time, Lenore Ralston, Dick Sherman, and Sylvia Parasoto will give a personal theology presentation on small group ministry and Chalice Circles at UUCB. So that'll be in a couple weeks, Zoom only for personal theology. And did anybody here get an email from the Ministerial Search Committee? I think it went out. Okay, if you haven't seen it yet, it went out to all members either yesterday or today. It is the EPIC, Getting Ready for the Search survey. It is an important step in the ministerial search process, gathering census information, creating a picture of who we are and aspire to become, and providing a basis for what UUCB feels you need in your new minister. So the survey is collected anonymously, so please share it as openly as you wish. It is available in your email. There'll be a link in the week ahead. And any questions or anything else that you want to ask the search committee about, they have a table in the atrium. And they'll be there, I think, going forward on Sundays. And there's a lot of tables in the atrium. I walked in and went, whoa, what is all this? And Marin looked at me and went, well, this is normal. We're getting back to normal, isn't it fun? Yes. So there are some additional sharing circles this Sunday and several going forward as we continue our discussion on determining the future of UUCB's retreat property in Sonoma County, Freestone. So these are Chalice Circle style sharing circles. They'll also be today in the music room after the service, and we'll have a couple on Zoom coming up and others on additional Sundays. And for the full timeline of what's happening this fall as we talk about Freestone, you can pick that up. It's a yellow handout right by the door in the atrium. You can grab that after the service. And if you came last week to the sharing circle, it's the same questions. You're welcome to come again, but if you haven't come, I really encourage you to come. And we'll talk about how we feel and things that we've seen and done there and our experiences. All right, we ready to close out with some music? All right, We Would Be One, a beautiful song about community and belonging. Please rise in body or in spirit. The words will be on screen. close with some absolutely beautiful words by Starhawk about community. See if you can find yourself in here. We are all longing to go home to some place we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned, we can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Community. Somewhere, there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere, a circle of hands will open up to receive us, eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter, a circle of healing, a circle of friends, someplace where we can be free. May we ever seek and ever find that community wherever we are. May it be so.